So the Nike Jaw Signature line has really taken a weird and wild turn from the first and second iterations of the Jaws. The first ones were honestly just a very, to me, just basic shoe. The second almost just looked like a cheap copy of the Sabrinas, just with kind of downgraded materials, to be honest. I mean, you know, really the best thing you had in here was a zoom unit, and it was a really thin one at that. You did have a top-loaded shank, that was nice. But other than that, it was just kind of a basic shoe. Not bad, but basic. Whereas in the threes, these were more of a shoot for the fence type shoe. And although they are home runs in a lot of categories, they do have one glaring issue that I hope for a lot of people's sake doesn't harm them, but there are very easy ways to fix this glaring issue in the shoe. I'm going to show you them. You can do them at home. They're super easy, so that you can use all the great tools of it, but also keep it safe on foot. All right, so the Jaw 3, let's just take a look at the midsole and see what I'm talking about in terms of the issues that I see. Now, number one, the uppers I think are awesome. The only thing I didn't like about the uppers is they didn't breathe as well as they look like they would. But other than that, I think they're very, very cool. I do like the container here. There's like a little thin TPU underneath of this rubber, but then there is rubber that goes all the way around it. Other than that, no notes. I actually really like the uppers of these. But getting into the midsole, now number one, it does have the double thickness heel counter. Love that for containment. I wish more companies would do this. Nike really has the market cornered on that. But number two, it's this quote unquote hybrid Zoom X. Now why they felt the need to layer the Zoom X, I'll never know. But if you look at it on the top down screen, I actually have it color coded here. I'll sandwich them on top of each other. You can see here that this on the bottom is like a Zoom X scrap that is just glued together basically. And then on top of that is the real Zoom X. So you can see it here, I marked it here. That's where that scrap Zoom X goes. And then there's the normal Zoom X. Now, in running shoes, we've seen this before with the Zoom Fly line where they have Zoom X scrap. Now that is a much looser Zoom X scrap. This hybrid Zoom, this is definitely glued together. And so it's a much tighter bond than those scrap Zoom X on the bottom. And there's not much of it in the forefoot. It is more in the rear foot, but there is still a layer of it on the bottom. Now the top here, this shank is just, that's not doing anything. Look how short it is, right? So the shoe needs torsional stability from here to here. That's optimal, right? And so no matter, I mean, you can just do this like, I mean, that's, you know, obviously the shoe's cut open, but you know, this here, this twisting back and forth, you can really just twist the shoe like crazy. You should be able, like I said, it should go a little longer, like here in the Jaw too. I mean, you can see it, you know, it goes pretty far versus this one that is really short. So number one, I mean, if Nike was gonna do something to fix it, I would say lengthen the shank. I have to imagine that John Morant's actual shoe has a longer shank than this. I got to imagine his PEs. But what this is going to do is because the container here is just TPU, and it seems like in each one of these break points on the shoe, that's kind of like where it would fail the most. You know, you can kind of see it here. It's like an accordion. So it really wants to bend at this one where it kind of swoops in. I mean, that's the one I noticed. No matter if it's on the complete shoe or the teardown shoe, that shoe really wants to bend right here. And you can see where my finger is, that's right in front of that shank. And I think that's a huge issue. So the question is, what do you do to fix this at home, barring that you can't get Nike to come in there and put a bigger shank in your shoe or take out this weird hybrid Zoom X scrap glue job? Well, there are two easy methods to improve the containment of these shoes. Number one, and this is kind of like the no-duh one, this is kind of like the throwaway one, but it's orthotics. What you want to do is you want to have a full-length orthotic. You stuff that in the shoe, and that just naturally builds up the side-to-side torsional stability of the shoe. In this one, because they are a little bit low volume, you probably want a lower volume orthotic, but you want that low volume orthotic to have some of its torsional stability on its own. So you can't be putting in a more flexible orthotic into these things because it's not going to do anything, right? You need something that's actually going to be moderately stiff, that's going to hold the shoe. The one thing you don't want in this shoe is something like a really long carbon fiber leaflet type orthotic, or like a 4-foot plated orthotic, because even though Zoom X is incredibly lightweight, incredibly resilient for its weight, has incredible energy return, it's also very unstable. There's a reason why a lot of basketball shoes are still made with good old EVA, because it's a very stable side-to-side foam. Zoom X is not. Zoom X is a little bit more temperamental. And so if you introduce carbon fiber with that, like a leaflet, a springboard plate that is not integrated into the shoe, you're just introducing a lot of different moments into the shoe, right? A lot of different types of energy going through the shoe. So I wouldn't recommend that. Something I would just think just a standard arched orthotic, but a little bit stiff. Like I said, the orthotic one, the orthotic trick, that's kind of the Captain Obvious modification. There's also another modification that you can do to these that adds relatively no weight, as well as really doesn't take up much room in the shoe either. And it really bumps up the containment of the shoe, makes the shoe just hold itself together a lot better from the inside out. And that is what is called containment webbing. Now, containment webbing or pie crusting is done with incredibly cheap materials. It's done with just a roll of moleskin. This entire roll will cost you 10 bucks. And so to do one shoe in a containment web will cost like cents, right? So it's very inexpensive to do one roll. Should probably last you a lifetime, to be honest. This stuff is incredibly flexible. It's incredibly light. It's adhesive on the back. Now, what you want to do is you can do this in a lot of different configurations. You can containment web just one little piece of the shoe. You can do the entire shoe from medial to lateral, or you can just do one side of the shoe. So what I like to do is take moleskin and then measure from just like the lace line of the shoe, so right here, to the middle of the shoe, right? Now you can take these webs all the way from one lace line to the other. That's a complete containment web that goes all the way throughout the shoe. At minimum, you want to go from the lace line to the middle of the shoe, or I like to say across the strobel, so where it meets the other side of the shoe. So what you want to do is you want to take that length, and then basically, as you can see, I just cut these down into strips. And basically all we're gonna do is make a pie crust on the inside of the shoe. Now what I like to do is go over under. So take the first one vertical, the next one horizontal. I say at least make these strips long enough to get into the forefoot. What that's gonna do is hook the most unstable part of the shoe, this part of the uppers, into the most stable part of the shoe and use your own foot as the biggest containing element. Now what I do is I start vertical and then I go one vertical and then I do a horizontal. Now these horizontal strips, you want to make sure they at least go into the forefoot, so kind of right into the toe box. So I'd say, if it's just midline of the toe box, that's fine. It's obviously going to be a lot easier to do when the shoe is cut open. So it does take a little bit of practice to do this when the shoe is closed in. So you're kind of going to be pushing into the shoe. A lot of times I say take the laces out when you want to do them. I'm doing this obviously just for demonstration purposes so you can see it. You do not want to go up the tongue, so you kind of want to go around the tongue there. And sometimes what I'll do is if I get big enough strips, I'll actually put the laces through the moleskin so it's tied down even more. But then if the moleskin starts to come out, then you gotta take the laces out to redo it. So that can kind of get to be a pain in the neck. And so basically all I'm gonna do is pie crust this all the way to the top of the shoe. Now, or the top of the forefoot of the shoe. You're just gonna keep pie crusting. And then as you can see, it starts to get pretty dense. Now, I've done this to where I've done the entire shoe where I've gone into the rear foot and added strips, and you can add little other pie crust, but I did here. And in this one, I showed that you can do the tongue too. If it has a high enough gusset, you actually can get the tongue involved in this actually. You can kind of see the issues when you put the tongue involved. But I showed here that if the tongue doesn't have a lot of movement, you can put this here with the tongue. It's just this strip here is probably gonna be an issue. I probably should have cut this off right there. But this was just another example I used. Actually, this is the example I use in my shoe customization lower leg taping ebook. So if you wanna learn this technique in writing as well as in video format, I do a tutorial on this, as well as a ton of other shoe customizations for other issues you might run into. Check out my ebook down below. But this was the demonstration shoe I did on that one. And so you can see my final product here. As you can see, I went up the tongue on one. I didn't cross the gusset, but I went up the tongue on one of these. And basically it's created a pie crust here in the forefoot. Like I said, it's really hard to get into the forefoot here when the shoe is, when you actually have a whole shoe. But like I said, even if you can't get into the forefoot, like on this one, I can get kind of like up to, right up to the lace line. That's pretty good, right? And this gives a ton more containment on the inside of the shoe. And so just remember, you want those horizontal stripes to come at least all the way across the strobel. You want to make sure that those horizontal ones are going to where the strobel meets the inside. Now you can run it up the medial side too if you want an entire web. You don't need to. It's nice if you do. I've found that doing it on the bottom is just as good. It doesn't bulk the shoe up more. Like I said, if you want to cross all the way around, that's perfectly fine. That is, like I said, it's a much more containing web or more containing pie crust. If you just want to do it on the lateral side of the shoe, that the part where it needs more containment, as long as it crosses all the way across the strobo board and you got the insert on top of it, then you're doing just fine. This will have to be redone, right? This will come off, probably in a couple of weeks, a month, it'll have to be redone. Some people, it lasts a while, but if you're playing hard on it, eventually this moleskin is gonna start to fray a little bit. The thing is though, is there's not a lot of materials that are flexible enough to not hinder the shoe, but also strong enough to actually create some containment. I found moleskin to be the best, but I'd say like 3-4 weeks, you'll probably have to be redoing it. If you sweat a lot in your shoes, make sure it is dry, you get it in there, give it a minute to adhere to the shoe. You might just wanna run a little bit of a hair dryer, on the adhesive before you put it on. That'll allow the adhesive to stick on there. I've been surprised at how well these stay on as long as you cross the strobo board, put the insert, on top of it, the orthotic or the shoe's insole on top of it. It actually does pretty well. So like I said, you can also do the orthotic plus this, that's a lot more containment, or either one of these. But I'd say if you can get the containment up, then, honestly, this is, I think, a lot of the best of both worlds. The one thing that I don't have an answer for is the glue delamination on the bottom of this. If you're shearing a lot, if you're playing really hard, I think a lot of the people in this audience have the skills to handle these types of shoes and not roll their ankles and, and extract the best parts. But I still do worry what happens when this here, you can just see me separating it with my instrument here in my hands. You can see it on here. Like that's all unstable foam. So that's the one thing I don't have an answer for you to do at home. But I think maybe in the next version of the Jaws, maybe Nike just maybe doesn't put this in there, because I think that there's just nothing here that is gonna benefit you, right? It's just better off being an entire bed of Zoom X. We'll see what happens, but love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. If you do wanna see the full review and teardown of the Jaw 3 and all the pros, cons, everything in between, make sure you click into this video right here, subscribe down below. I'll see you in the next video.